already went over the vocabulary. We skipped over 129, 130, etc. And basically, we're now going to pick up with the grammar of this particular unit. Fortunately, the grammar of this unit I already covered with you. The so-called Bacal letters are found on page 132. Only this time I will review it more intensively than she has it here, and we'll do the exercises that she has. And also the pages that follow I've covered with you, believe it or not. So we should be able to get through these pages before the weekend, and let's try to do that. All right, so to begin with, on page 132, she has the prepositions, the bet and the lamed. What she does not have is the letter kav. So I'm going to give you a more complete picture. What is called by her the prepositions. The prepositions are normally referred to as the bet, the kav, and the lamed. And as a result, they're referred to as the bakal letters. The so-called bakal letters. Get used to this new terminology. The bakal letters are the bet, the kav, and the lamed. They are prepositions which are equivalent to 9 different English words. 9 English words have 3 Hebrew letters representing them in Hebrew.
Prepositions are from the meaning of a preposition.
A preposition is a word, I don't know what the meaning is. It's like the word in or on or for or at. Those words are called prepositions. They're not nouns, they're not verbs, they're not adjectives, but they are words, you might say, but they have a special purpose, and they represent different little monosyllabic words in English. Words like in or on or to or at or by or of, these are called prepositions. At least that's the language she uses here, and consequently, we're going to use the same language, which she calls prepositions, right? She only uses 2 letters, the bet and lamed. I'm giving you a 3rd letter, the kav letter, and you'll see what that letter represents in a second. Anyway, the so-called bakal letters, they're called the bakal letters. We'll look at page 132. Now, keep in mind that there are other letters that are thrown at you from time to time. For example, the Aleph and Tav letter, which doesn't get a translation at all in English, and so you need to know the theory behind it. The word et, this is not letters. This is an actual monosyllabic word. Et has no translation in English, and its use in Hebrew whenever you have a sentence and you have a direct object and has a definite state to the direct object, then the word et must be used before it. So, for example, ani ro'eh, ani ro'eh student, I see a student. But if I want to say I see the student is ha student. That's a direct object, which is definite. Ani ro'eh et ha student, rather than ani ro'eh ha student. I need to have the word et in front of it. So et is difficult because there's no English word for it, but there's a Hebrew word. In the same token, Hebrew has, how should I put it to you? Yeah, English has indefinite articles, like the a word or the an word, which Hebrew doesn't have equivalent of. The definite article is the hey letter, but an indefinite article, Hebrew doesn't have that. English does have a or an. And so you need to insert that when you translate Hebrew into English. I see a child. That's in English. And I see a child. Ani ro'eh, a child. Ani ro'eh, I guess, yeled. But put it this way, Hebrew has ani ro'eh yeled. I see a child. English has that word a. I see child is incorrect English. Whatever. Anyway, the Bakal letters. Let's now go through a complete review of it. The bet letter represents the following English words: the word in, the word on, the word at. These are the 3 basic meanings of the letter bet when it's used in Hebrew. In something, at something, on something, and a fourth meaning with, the word with. So let me stop with that fourth meaning. See, Edna doesn't go into that. I do. If the letter bet means with, then what about the other word with? The word im. And now we're going to get tricky. This word im, spelled with an ion, is the word in English for with if it is accompanying an inanimate object. I go with a dog, I go with my wife, I go with a friend, whatever. You use the word im. But on the other hand, if the with word is followed by an inanimate object, such as anikotev, I am writing with a pencil, let's say, anikotev im iparon would not be correct. The word for pencil in Hebrew is iparon, a word that's now becoming more deleted than ever because nobody writes with pencils anymore. If they even write, they use computers, they use their phones. But anyway, iparon is a good word to know for pencil. Iparon, iparon, iparon. I write with a pencil. Anikotev im iparon is incorrect.
How would you say mechanical pencil? Is this a mechanical pencil?
I guess.
Mechanica?
I don't really know.
How do you say mechanical in Hebrew?
It could be. I don't know.
Oh.
And since it's a common new word, I'm sure Israeli Hebrew uses an international word for it. I don't know. It makes sense what you said, though, but I don't know. Anyway, the word iparon, I'm going to get back to that word in a second. Iparon, and then writing with a pen, you use the letter bet. The normal pointing the bakal letter is with a shvana, and we haven't even gotten there yet. But that's the correct Hebrew. Anikotev im iparon, incorrect. Anikotev bit iparon. But then did I not say that the word bet represents the word in or on? And that, yeah, it means all those words. It also means with. So keep that in mind when I use bit iparon. And the word for pen, by the way, just to get into words that are no longer going to be used by people, is the word eight. The word eight is a pen. And that word eight sounds like the word et, because many Israelis have a tendency of saying the et word as eight. And if I'm not mistaken, et can also be vocalized and is in Hebrew literature as eight. The difference between eight, sign or direct object, definite direct object, and eight as a pen. One has an aleph, one has an ayin, one has a tet with eight, one has a tav. But the tav and tet today are pronounced the same way. The aleph and the ayin today are pronounced the same way. They're spelled differently. It looks clearly two different words, but in pronunciation, this is what happens. We lose some of the sounds of our alphabet. And your English language is full of these words. That's right. In English, for example, the letter C doesn't really exist. Whenever you say the letter C, as in cat, sounds like a K, as in rice, sounds like an S. And what about the letter X? The letter X can either be a KS sound or a GS sound. So it depends on how you say that word with X. Exit, exit. If I say exit, sounds like a GS. If I say six, sounds like a KS. Well, but the X doesn't have its own distinctive sound. The C doesn't have a sound anymore. So every alphabet has dead letters. Hebrew's got letters that are dead all over the place, or they sound the same.
So you're saying that the English, the Gregorian X is a dead letter at the beginning.
The Royal X?
The X at the beginning doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
It may make sense.
Well, an X, if you have an X in front of a word, zero, for example, zero. What sound are you giving the X when you say zero? You're giving the sound of an S, zero, or Z maybe, zero. Yeah, maybe it's a Z, zero. Well, if it's a Z sound, why don't you write it with a Z? But it's spelled with an X, I believe. Or maybe I'm misspelling the word. I think zero is spelled with an X. And the only explanation I can give is that back in the day, they did give a distinguished sound to that X. Perhaps the classic example of a letter which today is no longer pronounced the way it normally is. It's normally pronounced based on other Semitic languages that letter Vav as a W sound. And that's right. You have Mizrahi Jews who basically will sound a Wah sound with the Vav. The Yemenites are known for it. But the Ashkenazim in today's Israeli Hebrew, they don't say the Vav anymore as a Wah Wah. They do it as a V sound. But when we're introduced to the sounds where they're produced, remember the bilabials, or both lips together? We had the bet, the pay, the mem, and the vav. It was a wah, wah originally a W type of sound. Anyway, languages change over centuries. New words come in, new sounds are produced, other sounds are reduced, etc. And what I find interesting about the word iparon, again, looking for the shoresh of a word. If a word has more than 3 letters, forget about vowels. You don't deal with vowels when it comes to roots. I got an A, an ayin, a pei, a resh, and a nun. When you do roots, you write the regular letter. Don't write it as a final letter. And if you have more than 3 letters, you either chop off the first letter or the last letter. But if the first letter is a mem, then you chop it off. If it's a hey, it's probably a definite article. If it's an ayin, leave it alone. So it's the last letter that's the additional letter. And if that's so, then the root of this word is ayin perish. And it will shock you what ayin perish represents. There is a Hebrew word, ayin perish, and all of a sudden that word is the heart of the word for pencil. Before I tell you what ayin perish represents, let me double check and see if the old dictionary here should have it, and it definitely would have it. I'm looking up the roots, ayin perish, and what I'm going to find is the following. I've got the page all right. And let me see what word he says here. Well, he doesn't have the word I have in mind, afer, but he has the word afur, ayin peresh, and the translation is earthen, E-A-R-T-H-E-N, earthen. I'm surprised he doesn't have the word afer. Afer is the Hebrew word for dust. Let me take a look at the English to Hebrew, and let me double check that word dust. Yes. Only the word is pronounced as afar. Okay. Afar, afar, spelled ayin pei resh, and the vocalization given is afar, and that word afar is not mentioned here in the Hebrew. It's mentioned from English to Hebrew. All right, not a big problem. The word afar is the word for dust. And that word iparon has an ayin pei resh. Somehow it's related to the word afar. Now let your imagination think a moment. When you write with a pencil, is there dust that emerges? Or maybe what's involved here, Jeremiah, is that when you write with a pencil, back in the day when pencils were used all the time, dust does accumulate. Evaporation of the, I don't know, of the printing maybe.
So a fair means resh.
How's that?
Aleph pei resh means dust as a root, soresh.
Ayin pei resh, the root. is the word dust, D-U-S-T. I'm just assuming what's involved here with dust, D-U-S-T, or earthen is a translation I have, and the other one from English to Hebrew, or from Hebrew to English.
And that's a point of remark because when you do write with the old school pencils, even with the mechanical ones, it creates dust from pressing.
Does it? Okay. If that's what you say it happens, then it happens. So in other words, when you write, dust is created.
Yeah, because it diminishes the
Okay.
lead.
Okay. All right. Then the connection is a good one.
Not much, but
I was thinking of the evaporation of the pencil print eventually evaporates. A pen, on the other hand, if I remember from back in the day, was something more permanent. So
they used to have it with like Indian ink and permanent ink.
yeah, well, that's it. Whereas pencil lead, I guess, is less permanent and so evaporates, etc. That's why signatures have to be very careful. So why not a printed signature? Well, printed signature, anybody can imitate that. It's your handwriting that somehow has to be captured. Whatever it is, I find when the word pencil or when that word has to be invented, that's how words come about. There's an existing word called dust out there. And so from that existing word, they create the word iparon. And another thing you need to know, if you have a word where the last letter is a nun, there's a tendency that the nun ending word is something more permanent. That's why a nun is added, I guess, to words. It implies permanency.
Bringing down.
How's that?
Or bringing down. There's the Shabbat rabbi. His name is Aaron Raskin. And I believe he's from Brooklyn, Chabad Lincoln Heights. And he goes through all the letters of light, and the series letters of light, and he elaborates on that.
It does.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of interpretation it gives.
I'll send you.
Okay. Okay, when it comes to letters itself, the letter nun gets its name because it resembles a type of fish called an eel, a nuna.
Oh, Nuna?
No.
Nuna means you?
I guess. No, normally Hebrew letters will represent something. That's how they get the name. So goes the theory. So the aleph letter is supposed to be an ox head.
So essentially, the characters, the letters in Hebrew were like the Chinese letters depicting were pictorial and then turned into letters, like pictures of something. Like you said,
Well, you're saying the same thing as I am. In other words, something is pictorial, something's out there in nature, an object, and consequently, a name for the alphabet letter is associated with that particular object. It's hard for me to understand the aleph letter, except this is how it's done. We write the aleph letter today like this. That's what it looks like today. Back in the day, it's said to look like this. And once it looks like this, all of a sudden it discovers to be similar to an ox, OX, the head of an ox, when the head of the ox is decomposed. The word bayit, for example, if you look at your way of spelling Hebrew, my friend Yirmiyahu, that word bayit looks just perfect for the word house, and that's how the second letter gets its name, the bet letter. What are you talking about, says Jeremiah? How does that look like a house? You've got to have an imagination. See that letter? Turn it around like this. That's your pathway, and you're entering into your house. And before you know it, that particular letter like that looks like the tefillin, the head, the tefillin shalosh, the what's the word I want? The boxes where you put the tefillin manuscripts in, the phylacteries. The one that convinces me is the gimel. That gimel looks like this, at least the way I make it. Once you have imagination, go like that. And that gimel is supposed to be the hump of a camel, of a gamal. And so it goes on. And I guess the one that comes to mind is the kippah that you wear on your head. This particular kippah is nothing more than the shape of a kaf. The kaf letter, once you turn it upside down, can look like a head covering. That's how people make associations. And the kuf letter, of all letters, just look at the name, the kuf letter. Sounds like the word kof. Kof in Hebrew is a monkey. What the hell is the contact between, in appearance, a monkey and a kuf? I guess monkeys, the way they make their shapes, looks like this. And as far as the eel goes, EEL, and the nun, well, the nun looks like that. So I guess that's the association there. And so it goes on. It's interesting how people have so much in common, and yet they're so different, so they claim in their experiences, etc. But if you want to reduce it, that's what you do. Okay, I don't want to get too far carried away, but I was going on with the Bakal letters. So the bet letter itself, let me try to again summarize its meanings: in, on, at, or with. The letter that Edna Coffin does not include in the list here is the Kaf letter. The Kaf letter is supposed to represent the word kemo. Kemo is the Hebrew word for like or as. Like someone, as something, the word like. So the Kuf letter represents the longest spelling of kemo. Kemo. What these three letters have in common, I'll get to in a second, when you use them in Hebrew. The Lamed letter is as common, if not more common, than the Bet letter. The Lamed letter is a sign of the infinitive, so the meaning of that word is to, T-O. The Lamed also means of, O-F. The Lamed also means for, F-O-R. And I guess those are the three basic meanings: to, for, at. I can also add to that. But it's basically of, to, and for.
Yeah, she's missing that.
And I'm not going into the numerical association. Every Hebrew letter has a numerical value to it. So the bet is 2, the Kav is 20, the Lamed is 30. That's not what's interesting. What's interesting are these letters represent prepositions. We already gave you 4 meanings by the letter bet. We gave you 2 meanings by the letter Kaf, like or as. And the Lamed, there are 3 meanings there: 2, of, and for. Now, having said that, now comes the pointing of these letters. And I'll take the letter Lamed as the example. The letter Lamed is never written by itself. These 3 letters are attached to the word that follows. In English, when you say in, on, at, of, they're separate words. In Hebrew, it's a letter attached to the word that follows. And so the Lamed, normal pointing of the Bakal letters, is a shvana under the letter. The letter is attached to the word that follows, and that's what happens. There's a vowel underneath the word that follows, so you leave the Lamed with the shvana alone. If the word that follows has a shvana under it, you have a shva cluster, and the Lamed will be pointed with a chirik. And once you see it that way, then the shva originally underneath the word that follows, a shvana at first, now becomes a shvanach, as the lamed has a chirik under it to break the shva cluster. And what if the letter that follows is laryngeal letter, aleph, ayin, hey, chet, and it has a chataf under it, a chataf patach, a chataf sagol, or chataf kamatz. The lamed is affixed to it. There's a shva cluster between the shva of the lamed and one of the chatafim, whereas here is a shvana on the first word, letter of the word that follows. You break it with a chirik. In the case of one of the chatafim, the lamed takes over the sound of the chataf. So the lamed will be pointed either with a patach or sego, or short kamats. And then finally, then there's another rule. If your bakal letter is attached to a word that begins with a yud letter, and the yud has a shva under it, the bakal letter has a shva cluster. You break it by pointing the lamed with a chirik, and then you go one step further. You drop the shva completely under the yud. So the final form looks like this: li, li, li. And then finally, the last point about the bakal letters: if your bakal letter is attached to a word that has a definite article in front of it, it strikes out the definite article and takes over whatever vowel is underneath that definite article.
So there's only three Baka letters.
How's that?
There's only three Baka letters.
That's right.
Bet, Kaf, Lamed.
Bet, Kav, Lamed, right. But this isn't easy. The Bet, Kav, Lamed are not individual words. They become letters, you might say. In English, they're individual words. And don't forget the phenomenon of the word ma. That word ma stays as an independent word, but we always treat that patach there as a short vowel. The hey is not a real consonant, and the next word has a dagesh chazak in it to close the short patach on the mem. As in the phrase, what's happening? Manishma. Look at how I'm spelling that word. I put a nun, I put a dot in that nun. For what purpose? The nun is beginning a word. Is that nun has a dot to close the patach underneath the mem. And even though the word ma is written individually, it is said in such a way that's like the first syllable of the word that follows. We don't say ma nishma, we go manishma, manishma. We literally link the word to the word nishma. Whatever. But the word is written independently, but that patach is the reason why there's a dagesh chazak in that note. The same thing is true about the word what's new. The word chadash, the mem letter is pointed with a segol before a laryngeal letter which has a medial kamatz under it. It's not ma chadash, it's me chadash. That deals with the ma word. Anyway, people, I think you got a feel now of how the bakals are used, and Edna is going to do the same thing, only she's restricted to just a few comments. So let me see what she has to tell us. Okay, the prepositions change in meaning according to the context of the sentence. And one translation, therefore, is not always adequate, meaning the bakal letter lamed will have multiple meanings depending upon the sentence it's found in. Same thing's true of the bet. The translations given here indicate the most common meanings. So for the letter lamed, the word two or for, it also means the word of. So get down that meaning as well. Lamed two, for, of, of. And I won't be surprised if you have a sentence with the word at, that the lamed may be used for the word at. But definitely what she says, to and for and of, of. The letter bet she gives in or at. I give you two more meanings. On, on, and the word with, with, distinguishes from the word im with an ayin mem, the bet letter being with something inanimate. And then it goes on. Like the definite article, these prepositions are prefixed directly to the noun. Definite article is a hey letter and never appear separately. So to a bookstore, l'chanut svarim. But in a bookstore, well, to a, okay, so l'chanut svarim. There may be a problem with this. No, there is a problem here. I'll tell you why it is a problem in a second. And the same thing with Hanut. Okay. All right. What she's trying to say is that the Bet and Lamed are not written individually. They're attached to a word that follows. If Edna Coffin, who is Israeli born, Israeli trained, military service, and full professor at the University of Michigan for many years, now in retirement, and I believe still among the living, a very active member of the National Association of Professors of Hebrew, of which I was once the president of. She and I had many discussions in America and also in Israel when I was there. The word Hanut, if the word Hanut were written by itself, that's how you spell it. That word Hanut as an absolute noun, this way. As a definite state, the store, notice the hay is pointed with a segol because the het letter has a miyukamatz under it. And then as a construct word, the word is spelled Hanut. Look at my spelling, Hanut with a hata pata hanit het. This means store of. What Edna gives us is Chanut Sfarim. The proper spelling of the word Chanut in the phrase bookstore, Chanut Sfarim. Sorry, let's put the Charid Mem. Should be with a Chata Pata Chanitachet. Means store of books. Your English bookstore. If this is the proper spelling, Professor Garber, of bookstore, then a Lamed letter cannot be spelled with a Shvana. There is a Shva cluster between the Shvana of the Lamed and the Chata Patach of the Het. It should be Lachanut Sfarim. Question. You're an American born. You're a Hebrew that is not on par with Edna. I acknowledge that. So why do you say she makes the error? This is what happens, Jeremiah and Baruch. When you become a native speaker, you don't realize after a while you have distorted grammatically the Hebrew. Even a professor at the University of Michigan. She has the wrong pointing.
When you become a native speaker?
How's that?
When you become a native speaker?
No.
When you grow up speaking and you speak it,
when you start speaking a native language, you know.
Colloquialism, lexicon.
Well, wait a minute. If Edna were here right now, she would say, "Excuse me, I did not write the Shana." A graduate student by the name of Jeremiah did. The vowels were put in by her graduate students.
Allegedly.
That doesn't make her not responsible.
Allegedly.
She has to be the final reader. It's her name on this book call.
So it's her error.
No, it should be Lachanut. I stand by what I'm saying. The reason why I'm seeing it now for the first time is I never went over this stuff with former students. We just skipped over and went into exercises. Okay, that's my statement there. Definitely Chanut Sfarim, judging from the English, is a store of books, so it has to be the Chanut with a Chata Patach and the Chet. When you write without vowels, do you not see the advantage? An Israeli Sabra will not know what you're talking about. They don't know from vowels. They'll say Lachanut, and that's the end of it.
So is it a hatak patak or is it?
It's a Chata Patach and the Chet. Yeah. Again, I thought I gave you the three states. This is a Chata. Let's just get the word again down. Again, for every noun, it would be good to get into this habit. You have the absolute state of the noun, the word Hanut. You have the definite state. Only you got to remember the definite article is pointed with a segol before the laryngeal letter, which has a medial kamatz under it, which is in this case here. And then the construct is not the word Hanut this way, but rather the Hamatz is a Hatapata. Why so? When you have a word in a construct, that word may be written individually, but it depends on the next word. So this kamats, when it's a definite article, when it's the indefinite article, meaning the absolute state, is one place removed from the accent on the last syllable. The last syllable needs to have the accent because it is a long vowel, closed situation, irregular, and accented. When it comes to the construct, the emphasis is on the next word, store of, and here is where you put your emphasis. So the construct becomes, the kamats now is removed several places from the accent of the word itself and becomes now a hatapata. Reduced to shvana, cannot take a shvana, it is placed a hatapata. That word means store of, hanut farim. If I said hanut with a hatapata and no word following hanut, it means store of what? Store of what? It's being possessed by somebody, by another word. Now, Edna Coffin is not dumb. If you notice what she says here, she also has reference to the end of the book. Maybe she doesn't see it. I thought I saw her. She has at the end of the book itself more comments about the Bacchal letter. She only gives here just several of them. Well, let me read what she writes here. Changes in the vowel of the preposition occur in a few cases, and we already went into them, and are determined by the first noun which follows the preposition. This happens more in literary style, but occurs in speech as well. Well, now what are you going to make of that? When she says this happens more in literary style, then Professor Garber, what you're doing is teaching literary style. And then she says it occurs in speech as well, implying that speech really doesn't get into that detail. It's not going to work by me. Either it's yes or no. The hanut is with hatapata, where you have speech, literary, or everyday. Just point the lama with a pata. Now she writes, before shva in the first syllable of the noun, the preposition will have the sound of the chirik. All right? She doesn't mention anything about the hatafim. So in the word Tiberia, you add a lamed to the feria. Lamed has a shvana under it. Shva cluster between the shvana of the lamed and the shva of the word Tiberia, Tiberius. So it becomes Litveria. Tiberius, let me just say a few words about this place, is one of the four so-called holy cities. For those who are into biblical history, whatever, there are four cities that stand out as the holy cities. One is Sfat.
That's where a lot of the great scholars.
Just 1 minute. Wait a minute. No, my good friend Baruch, that's the place he wants to wind up one day. Yeah, well, you're going to find your Isha. Your Isha. Your selected wife will come from Sfat. She's into weeds, you'll join her. All right, so what is Sfat? Can't get personal here. But that's all right. Jeremiah is saying, you talk that way, I'll introduce you to weed. All right, the word Sfat. This word Sfat in English is Safed, S-A-F-E-D. It's known as the city of the mystics. And indeed, if you go on the website and get any kind of video which deals with Sfat, you'll see the people are dressed like hippies. They wear their skirts, I guess. Many of them are religious. They got tassels hanging from their outside garments.
The men are wearing like robes?
Yeah, they wear like robes.
The robes, like traditional.
Yes,
traditional
yes. They're painters, they're artists, they're educated.
Yeah. The city of Safat.
Right, you check it out. Or the word is in English pronounced as Safed, S-A-F-E-D. Tzfat, I'm writing the Hebrew out for you. Tzfat. It's a monosyllabic word, C-I-N-C-V-C, as you can tell. In fact, let's review that with you. The tzadi has a shvana under it. The fe has a pata closed by the tav at the end. And as you write out these words, do a little review. A bega kefil letter following a vowel or half vowel is never going to be plosive. So the fe is following a shvana, and the tav is following a vowel, the patak, short vowel. And regarding the sounds of letters, let me make a statement about that tzadi letter. That tzadi letter is not a Z sound at all. It's an S sound. So when I see the Hebrew word Zion, notice the spelling. I'm not arguing about the spelling. Zion. Short Kirit Dagesh Chazak in the Yud. The Vav at the end is a long cholam, so I put a dot above the Vav. And then I see the transliteration with the letter Z, as in the word Zion. If I want to go literal with Hebrew, it has to be TZ, and that would not work.
That letter would traditionally be the first letter of Tzadi.
The Tzadi letter is a TS sound, not a T, not TZ, not TZ at all. So here you have a Hebrew letter where people pronounce correctly Tzion. In other words, Tselem, B'Tselem Elokim, the image of God, the word Tselem. I have no problem the way people are saying the word. I'm not saying there's something wrong with that. It's just that what they're saying as a Tselem word, as a Tzion word, is TS sound, not a TZ sound. And probably the classic example is the word Eretz, that we talked about on Tuesday. Eretz means land. Eretz Yisrael, land of Israel. And I often see that word Eretz for Israel transliterated as E-R-E-T-Z. It should be T-S. Or academically, the Society of Biblical Literature will have the S sound for Samech, we'll have an S looking like that for the sin, and we'll have an S with a dot under it for the tzadi. This is academic transliteration.
Repeat that, so the regular S.
The regular S is a Samech. The sin letter is pronounced today like a Samech. Keep in mind, if the dot's on the right side, that's a Shin. On the left side, that's a Sin. And the Tzadi letter looks like this. The Society of Biblical Literature, which is the academic society in this country that deals with biblical traditions, apocrypha, all that stuff, has its meeting in November in Denver. I'm going to lead a session. I hope I can still go. I don't know if I can go on a plane anymore. You see the way I walk? I got to really overcome this now. Anyway, one of the groups of letters that I taught you were the phonemes of the sibilants. And we had what? We had an S letter. In fact, I transliterated that for you. Had an S that looked like that, an S that looks like this. Then you had a Z sound, and then you have the tzadi, where the tzadi comes before. The tzadi is an S with a dot under it. And then you have the Z. These are the 5 sibilant sounds. There's regular S, and a sh, and a s, and a ts, and z. In Hebrew, the samech, the shin, the sin, the tzadi, and the zayin. Anyway, this comes back again and again. Let me go over the 4 cities. Let me just go over it. I'm gonna erase this already now. What? What is that?
It's on video. It's okay.
You only did one city, so
Also fat. So we're going to, he'll get there.
I'm going back to
Oh,
Sfat.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, Sfat is one holy city. If you want to put it on one leg, it's basically for mysticism. Again, today Sfat it's known as a cultural city. It's a laid-back city, you might say. They have great-looking restaurants. They have one second. They have color. They have this. They that, and they're mystics. What can I say? Most of them. I would say most of them, but you can have it there. And perhaps the one that's the one that's the famous rabbi there is the Ari. There's a famous rabbi known as the Ari. The word Ari could easily be interpreted as the word lion, I guess. But Ari represents his acronym. Rabbi Isaac possibly is the R and I. I'm not sure.
Oh, Rabbi Isaac Luria.
Luria, right. Very good. Baruch's got the name right. The name is Luria. His most famous teaching is called the Big Bang in English. The Tzimtzum.
No, that's the great rabbi, which Chabad bases their prayer nusach. It's called the Nusach Arizal, based on his formation by his students of the Siddur, which is commonly known as the Chabad Siddur, which is the Arizal
Okay.
Siddur, which is used by all groups.
All right, what he's referring to is the Orthodox movement. That's an outreach called the Chabad movement, which is based upon three letters, the Chabad. Again, almost anything you say, there's some kind of association. Chabad is not really a name in its own. It's an acronym. That Het letter stands for Chokhmah, wisdom. The Bet letter is Bina, understanding. And the last letter, the Dalet letter, well, I'm going to correct that first letter. The Dalet letter is the word for, let me just get it straight now, Chokhmah or Chesed, Bina, and Dina. Dina. The Dalet is what?
Aqua, Bina, Dalet. Oh, but that's what it means actually, Dina. Dina is judgment?
Dina means judgment. Dina,
Yeah.
Dina means
The name
judgment.
Dina means judgment, din, like a base din.
Yeah. Just 1 second right now. I'll get a little confused. Okay, Dina is judgment. From the word din, the word judge. Bina is understanding. I went immediately with the Chachma word and I made an error. Chachma is wisdom. And if you're interested in one interpretation, when you have the verse of Genesis chapter 1, Bereshit, in a beginning of, and then there's no word that follows, then you have the verb God created bara Elohim, then what the hell is this beginning of what? And a very famous French medieval rabbi, who was the most quoted one when it comes to medieval commentary, his name was Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo ben Yitzchak, I guess. Who knows these names anymore? As a child, we knew him as Rashi. That wasn't his name, it was an abbreviation. The R was for rabbi, and the Shin Yud were his initials for his name. I'm almost sure it's Shlomo Yitzchak. I'm not sure now. A medieval rabbi.
He was from France.
Huh?
Yes, he was from France and he had no sons.
That's right.
And he had daughters. So he taught his daughters and they were Tamid, Hahamot, and because they're women, they couldn't publish. So they published to their wives. So the wives that came, the writings that came to their husbands were from Rashi's daughters.
He's right about them. There were daughters who also wore the phylacteries. It's true. Son.
They wore what? The wraps, the command is when you say the Shema to put on the filling, the phylacteries boxes with kosher parchment from the Torah, saying from the Shema on the top box, it has crowns around your head, and drapes, and then you wrap it up the box with the other part of the Torah writing on your arm, and you wrap it, you make a shin, wrap it 7 times, then you make a dalet on the wrap, and then a yud, shin dalet yud sedai. They're basically that's how you're commanded to pray for the morning. 21st, and you don't wear them on Shabbat or holidays. I'll show you a picture after class.
What he's talking about in English is there's a Greek word phylacteries, phylacteries, and basically, if you see some of the Jews out of Uganda, for example, there's one that was on my Facebook. His photo sits. His name is Yitzhak Isaac. He has a phylactery on his head and on his arm. That's his picture. And every Friday it's Shabbat Shalom, and every Sunday or Saturday night, Sunday it's Shavuot Tov. He's greeting me always with the same greetings every week, week in and week out. But African Jews of his tribe are extremely religious, and they wear these tefillin all over. And he's right, you don't wear them on Shabbat or on holidays. And it depends on how you make the symbol. So there's a symbol that you make, and basically there's the Shin letter and the Yud letters, which means a gift, and all kinds of interpretations.
They vary between Ashkenaz and Sephardic customs on the wrapping of how they do that, but they end up forming the same letters, it's just in a different fashion and tradition. But my question, going back to this, was wisdom, understanding, and knowledge.
Let me get back to this thing here. What I was referring to is that the Chabad movement has the three letters from the 10 cycles, the 10 cycles of the mystical table, you might say. The highest one is the Ein Sof on my license plate.
Oh, that's the 10
But then there are 10, my words are losing me now. There are 10 emanations that come out of that. And the word Chokhmah, I use the word Chokhmah not to make an error intentionally, it's just that came to my mind immediately. So according to the Rashi interpretation, the beginning of is the word wisdom. That the beginning of the sign of wisdom, let's put it this way, is the creation from unformed and void, the Tohu Vohu, the creation of the order of the world, and so the first day. That's already inserting the missing concept. Something is missing here. The Bereshit should have a word that qualifies it. It does not. Beginning of what? There's a word that's missing. Unless you want to say beginning of God, which is another way of reading that phrase. Anyway, that word Chokhmah for wisdom. But the word that's probably found in the emanations of the Sfirot is that word Chesed. Chesed, which we translate as grace. So there are three particular Sfirot, three emanations. One is Chesed, one is Bina, and one is Dina, which the Chabad movement has taken as an acronym for what it sees itself defined and sees its mission as well.
And the source of that comes from Hashem gave Betzalel, Chachma, Bina, Da'at to build the temple.
Yeah.
That's where that source comes from in the Torah.
Yeah. Now, regarding the word chesed, I might even be mistaken right now. It could well be chokmah that's found. I suspect it's not chokmah, but I suspect. Meaning, I'm not sure, but I suspect it's chesed and not chokmah. Okay, and I don't want to get too far carried away with this, but Tzfat and Rabbi Isaac Luria, well, that's his name, Rabbi Isaac Luria, known as the Ari, is the famous rabbi associated with Tzfat. He's also the one who comes up with the thing of the so-called Big Bang. And in Hebrew, the Big Bang is the Tzimtzum.
The Hebrew version. Oh, but by this guy, the Arizal.
This is the Hebrew word. He's the one that is said to be the creator of a concept known today in science as the Big Bang Theory.
Well, a rabbi came?
A rabbi, the Holy Ari, one day, and I'm going to be very frank, I don't know if he smoked. I doubt it.
What's that?
I don't know if he smoked weed. I doubt it.
That may have been possible to inspire him.
All right, whatever it is, somehow he was very much, when you're into mysticism, you're out of this world.
That's not Kabbalah.
No, that is Kabbalah.
That is, okay.
But what he did, he died at 36. And most of the people practicing Kabbalah and mysticism, like at the Kabbalah Center, that they teach them, but what they teach them, if they don't have the foundation, they can't apply it or use it.
I'm not here to advocate Chabad advocacy or anything like that. Let me perhaps, for Jeremiah's purpose, and also for you, Baruch, let me just get something across about mysticism. My wife has told me the next book you should be doing with Ken is the book on mysticism. She's into this stuff right now. I know a little bit about Kabbalah. I don't know much.
Kabbalah Center?
Just let me get into this a second. The Hebrew word for mysticism is Kabbalah.
Does it mean tradition?
Just wait a minute. Wait a minute. The word Kabbalah, as you see the word, let's keep the word Hebrew as well. You have CVC. See the kuf letter? A patach underneath it, Lagesh Chazak in that bet, CVC. The bet letter is doubled. The first bet has the sound of the A on it, or rather is the closing feature of the patach before. The second bet, since the bet is doubled, a bigger capital letter having a dot following a vowel, that dagesh is going to be a dagesh chazak. So the so-called second bet is a second syllable. Kamatz is underneath that. The kamatz is a minial kamatz, not a short one. If this were a short kamatz, then there should be a lamed with a dot in it. So it's CVC, CV, and the last syllable is CV. And keep in mind that whenever you have a hey at the end of a word, it's not treated as a consonant, it's treated as a vowel marker. The root of the word Kabbalah is the verb to receive, the kabel. It's a PL verb, so I'll point it as kibel. The kabel is the infinitive. We don't know the PL conjugation yet. Kibel is the third person masculine singular he received. Tradition is called Masoret. And let me now make a distinction between the two words. Masoret, notice how I'm spelling it, with a media cholam. Right without vowels, you'll put a vav there to create the O sound. Let me just get out of your way in a second. This is a spelling I'm spelling it with. Masoret, a media cholam. The word masoret has a shorish to transmit. Any word that has a mem, the samech, not a sin, and resh means to hand over, to pass on. And now my two adult students. When you look at the Torah, shebektav shebal peh, the written Torah and its interpretive acceptance, you're passing on tradition. Tradition passes on one generation to the next one, to the next one.
That's why they call them Zohar publications.
1 second. When you talk about mysticism, it does not say Masoret. Jeremiah, mysticism you receive. You don't pass it on. What? If you're into Kabbalah, your mind cannot pass it on. It's internal, it's mystical. That is why the Masoret tradition says you don't study Kabbalah until a certain age.
40 years in marriage.
Secondly, you have to be married. What? You have to have children.
Why marriage?
Marriage, because the first commandment of marriage is not make me some fish, wife. The first act of a Jewish marriage, I'm going to shock all of you. The day of the Chatzminah. Let's get down words that's going to affect your life one day. Chatzminah. Let me talk, Baruch.
Yes,
The day of the wedding at night is a day that the Chatan and the kala. So I lose my teeth right now. The chatan. Let's try to spot. The chatan, the bridegroom, and the kala, the bride. They are separate from each other. They're separated. And both of them go through a fast. A fast, F-A-S-T. And then nighttime comes. Laura, let me continue. The marriage takes place. There's a lot of hooping, crying, and singing.
With the bridegroom and bride.
Well, there's an attendance there. But the minute the marriage is basically viewed and conceived that way publicly, the bride and bridegroom they don't hold their hands, they walk side by side, and they go to a special room. The door is locked. The door is locked. The door is locked. Don't bother the bride and groom. They're finally going to meet each other face to face. Like hell they are. They're going to break the fast. Like hell they are. Their marriage gets consummated, Jeremiah and Baruch, by one act, a conjugal act. Conjugal. The male says, my dear wife, are you ready? Yes. That is why the wedding night is not what you choose. They go over a group of women, a woman's council, will talk to the bride, what is your menses period? He's got to consume the marriage. That marriage is not consumed until he goes into her. She has to be pure for that. She cannot have menses. She goes through a mikvah.
Menses means she can't be in her period.
This is what the marriage is consumed. This honeymoon business is modern.
So what do you mean by consume that they engage in relationship?
It's called intercourse.
Yeah, it relates to correct.
And the reason why, Jeremiah, is that a baby will come. You're into Kabbalah, you're into God.
But the thing with Kabbalah, you have
The
to
wife, 1 minute, the wife is, she's the wife of the soldier. She's the Yeshua Chayo. She's for the Friday night candles. She's for Shabbat meals. Mysticism can do that to you. And what's going to shock both of you, when the Ari comes up with the Tzimtzum, and Tzimtzum means inner explosion, turning into yourself. The creation of this world is that God, as God is God, for whatever reason, turned into himself and exploded. But he exploded! And you know it by the image of God. We all have God's explosion. That's why you take care of your body. That's why the sanctity of a human being is so important. And you might as well throw in the animals as well. Nothing can be more horrendous than the killing of millions of dogs because we have no place to put them anymore. Bring them to a shelter, within 1 month, they're dead. How dare you say that to me?
That could be a previous human neshama that
Well,
ended up there.
what that's, you can go on with this stuff here. Well, that's right.
But one more thing about
1 second, let me finish, Baruch. So you have this beautiful song. You don't remember it, you weren't born then. Over the rainbow. And when man wants to enter, the animal says, you can't come in here. You killed us. You're not welcome over the rainbow. I can see in your face you can understand me. When that dog talks to you, you better pay attention. I have a dog that's blind in both eyes. He just screams now. He's got fleas attacking him. We do everything possible. Put him to sleep? Absolutely not. Baruch, if you can identify with that, that's wonderful. That's what makes Orthodox Jews, in my opinion, so far removed. They don't know animals. It's rare to find an Orthodox family having a dog running around. And when they do, they've crossed the bridge. Kelev. Yeah, the word for dog is kelev. Anyway, but you get the point. But one second, let me just finish the words from some. The fact that God turned into himself and boom is unusual. But that's the Kabbalah teaching of the Ari. And all of a sudden, you've got all kinds of theories now coming out of this. But the Big Bang, that Big Bang, that Big Bang, that Big Bang is God exploding. And let me get Christian about it. I see nothing wrong for a Christian mystic, of which there is Christian mysticism, seeing somehow the cry of my father, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, my God, why are you forsaking me? You know what? You know what, Jeremiah? God had a tzimtzum at the cross. He exploded and gave his son. Now you can almost see what I'm getting at. The son was given with a crucified death so that people like you and the rest of the world can survive. The explanation offered, without the crucifixion, the world would never be, ever.
But that begs the question.
That's the good that comes from the evil, you might say, if you want to see crucifixion as something evil.
But that begs the question, if he died for your sins, you just sin, not worry about it because he died for your sins, it's copacetic.
Yeah.
Couple have Mary's, our Father to be right.
This is how people, this new book we're coming out with, Perspectives on Evil, which I hope my good friend Jeremiah will come up with a story and we'll get it in there. But Susan wants to write about explosions like this and evil and goodness that comes from it. Good cannot come unless there's evil. Well, let me put it in your terms. How would the two of you know what good is if evil is not compared to it? It's a necessary reality, evil. Do I like it? Absolutely not.
If you didn't have evil, you wouldn't know what good is.
So are you willing to live with evil?
That's how Hashem created man.
Well, that's it. But maybe we ought to question Hashem. Why does it have to be this way?
He made us like him in his image.
Don't you see how this thing can go around? And it's powerful. That word tzimtzum, know that word. It's a good word to know. Anyway, that's fine. You go to Sfat.
It means explosion?
I don't know how to explain it.
What's it trying
Let
to
me
do?
see what the dictionary. Tzimtzum is turning into oneself.
Oh.
No. There's no. I'm losing my teeth here. The word tzimtzum, I'm sure, has an explanation to it, or has a translation. Let me see what the dictionary has. I'm so familiar with the Hebrew, I don't even go for translations, but it's important to know the translation. 1 minute. The actual tzimtzum, the famous tzimtzum, is turning in on oneself. And you also can understand, in light of what we're talking about right now, why Kabbalah is something received, but you can't pass it on. What's received by me, no matter how much I try to explain it, it's just my own restrictive opinion, and who knows how accurate I can be about this. All right, let's take a look at the word tzimtzum.
The R is all, he died
Tzimtzum translates here as condensing, contraction. Yeah, that's probably it. But it has nothing to do with the Ari Tzimtzum, but I guess that's condensing or confining, it says, or contraction. So God is the subject who contracts, explodes as a result. Anyway, let's go over the other cities. So Tzfat is one place. Tiberia is what got me started. Is another place. Tiberias.
By the river?
It could well be by the river.
They have the river, the Tiberias too, or see whatever.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know geography. Whatever you feel is associated with these cities, fine. I can tell you, however, what I know about Tiberias. Tiberias is supposed to be, if I'm not mistaken, the burial spot of major personalities. So, for example, Maimonides, if I'm not mistaken, his bones are somewhere in Tiberias. Joseph, famous Joseph of the house of Jacob, they bring his body back to Israel. Where is it located? I guess in Tiberias.
My understanding is it's Nablus.
How's that?
Nablus.
Nablus?
Nablus. The one that they can say Naples, but it's not Nablus. And the what Arabs are.
Okay. I know of Nablus, but that's not the same as Tiberias, though. Okay. No,
some things are
no,
part of that.
yeah, the Muslims might have a similar traditions in various spots because Joseph, I guess, is mentioned in the Quran. Anyway, Tiberias is supposed to be of sages, and if I'm not mistaken, the great medieval Jewish sage Maimonides probably buried here in Tiberias. But the name that comes to mind in light of a talk I tried to give you several days ago, is the name of Rabbi Akiva, the famous rabbi of the Second Temple period, whose 24,000 students are said to have no longer been executed. And the Lag BaOmer period, one of the explanations, is the end of the killing of Jewish students, if you will, during the Roman period. Akiva is said to be buried in Tiberias, and the traditions now started. The Lag BaOmer should not just simply be in Meron, which should be very high, but also have some kind of picnics and bonfires in honor of Rabbi Akiva, and that means shifting from Meron to Tiberias. Anyway, Tiberias, the burial spot of sages. Let's use that terminology. Then you have Hebron. Hebron is located not in Israel state proper. On the other hand, it is, but it's not within the state itself. It's in the West Bank. Hebron. 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 What is called by the people say is the West Bank. We call it Judea and Samaria. Baruch would definitely insist on that. It's no West Bank, there's no East Bank. It's one big state of Israel. And then for the Christian Zionists, Jeremiah, this is your grave. They're insisting that's all incomplete. Zion is all that stuff. And then it's also this country. So the Christian Zionists have had their control. They want everything. They want it all the way up to the Mediterranean. Not the Mediterranean, so what's that sea called? In Iraq somewhere.
Tigris, Euphrates.
Again?
Tigris and Euphrates.
Tigris, yeah.
Those were two of the four rivers that encircled the Garden of Eden.
That's right.
One was the Nile, and I forget what the other one was.
Well, Tigris Euphrates now is part of Christian Zionism. Israel is not a state yet until it has that place also.
Wow.
For them, the state is biblical state.
When I was in the Marines, we did a lot of travel down in Euphrates,
Yeah.
Iraq, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you were deployed in Iraq? Oh, what was popping up?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. You're the real deal. This is a real OG right here for the USA. USNC.
Were you there as part of part of the Marine Corps?
Yeah, he saw action.
Yeah.
That was a walk in the park, man.
Anyway, Hebron is associated as a holy city because the patriarchs and three of the four matriarchs are said to be buried here: Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As far as the mothers are concerned, I guess you have Rebecca, you have Leah. Let me go in here. You have Sarah, you have Rivka, and Leah. Sarah is Sarah, Rivka is Rebecca, wife of Isaac. Leah is the older sister of Rachel. The two sisters who were wives of Jacob. And the fourth wife, the youngest one, Rachel, is said not to be buried in Hebron, but on the road to Bethlehem. Anyway, Hebron today is under Jewish control. You have synagogues, you have mosques there.
Quick question: is Hebron a name also?
It's the name of the city. I don't
No,
know
I'm
a
saying,
proper name.
can it be someone's
Can it
last
be a proper name?
No,
But they got the company like Chevron. That probably came from there, Hebron.
they could well be, but that's names associated with Hebron. What comes to mind with the word Hebron, again, you got four letters, the Het, the Bet, the Resh, the Nun. The letter Nun, I try to say a few times already this hour, in my humble opinion, is for emphasis. So the root letters are really the Het, the Bet, the Resh, of which the common word would be Chaver, a friend, a companion, a comrade, a comrade.
Oh, Hebron.
That's that. Well, in English, it's Hebron, H-E, if I'm not mistaken. But then again, in English, just take the consonants, the H, the V, the R, and the N. That's your Het, Bet, Resh, and Nun.
And there was one more part of another person buried there. Esau went there when they were burying Jacob. He said, "Hey, this is my spot." So Dan's son, who was deaf and dumb, I think his name was Sushi. He didn't understand when they explained to him in sign language. He got so upset. He lost it. He hit him with a club so hard that he decapitated him, and his head went into the cave of Machpelah. Because I guess like he obeyed his father to an extent, but his deeds, his father didn't go in because he was a killer.
All right, this is something I'm not aware of, but I'm sure there's all kinds of associations. Anyway, Tzfat, Tveria, and Hebron. And then the fourth holy city, of course, is the city called Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. And what I did after class on Tuesday is that I did a little interview with David, with Baruch
It
rather.
was a beautiful time.
Well, one second, let me just write one thing. I'm getting so confused here. Yerushalayim. And basically, I said a few things about young Yerushalayim, the day of Jerusalem, quoting a verse or two from Psalm 122. If you open up your Bible to Psalm 122, there's a verse that says, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem." Shalom, shalom, Yerushalayim. Sha'alu, shalom, Yerushalayim. What is interesting about that verse, the psalm itself, Yirmiyahu, is not associated with David. It seems to be a psalm. The first sentences talk about the past of Jerusalem, and then the next verses talk about people being in dispersion, and then eventually, hopefully, the rebuilding of Jerusalem. So it's like a psalm of just a few sentences that talks about the importance and the history and the significance of Yerushalayim, playing upon the word shalom. The verse is interesting. It has sha'alu. Watch someone spelling it, sha'alu. Shalom. Yerushalayim. The word sha'alu is the Hebrew root shin aleph lamed. Shin aleph lamed, the verb itself is the verb to ask. A-S-K. The English translation of Psalm 122, that sentence that has shalom, is pray.
Is what?
Pray, P-R-A-Y. Let the mind now think. Yirmiyahu and Baruch, when you're engaged in prayer, seriously engaged in it, have a moment to reflect on what you're saying. Are you just simply giving glory to the Lord? Or are you also asking, why, Lord? You didn't even live that long. He was a good person. You need him in heaven. You have so many other apostles. So it's not unusual to have the word ask and pray in translation. Shalom is that word for peace, wholeness, totality. And then Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim has the same letters, the Shin letter, the Mem letter, the Shin, the Lamed, the Mem, has the word Shalom. In a popular understanding of the word Yerushalayim, it's the duality of the word Shalom. No other city has a duality for the meaning of peace. Only one city, Jerusalem. And the Shin and the Lamed is not complete yet. It needs amendment in it, but you're asking for, you're praying for, and when the praying and asking is fulfilled, then the word Shalom will be the word Shalom. To write liturgy of this caliber, you've got to be a genius. You're playing upon words. That's what a service should be about. The beauty of the prayer. What the pastor does is give some insight. I find that interpretation I just gave to be incredible. Why so? Because I can tell you Shalim has a duality probably because of the word Salem, a Canaanite king or Ugaritic period. That's irrelevant now. That's what tradition does. Ask and pray seem to be synonymous. And ain't that what religion is? My dear Jeremiah, you're going to be exposed to this in the fall. What happened then is happening now. Now was then is now. Nothing can be more significant in my life at this moment than to have a wholeness and peacefulness of a Jerusalem. The latest story for the New York Times is what Israelis did to Arab women. And the story has it that Israeli military dogs raped Arab women. Dogs. It's part of a New York Times newspaper column. That, Israel is not stopping this. They're now going to have a libel suit against the New York Times or against the author.
That's different. That's different from the one where the group of soldiers raped the woman.
Soldiers raping women, I can't believe that either if it's Israeli soldiers. Arab soldiers, I can understand that from them. But to have a news column where the author writes Israeli dogs were trained to rape Arab women. Dogs don't rape Arab women or any women.
They would have to be instructed, trained.
What you're saying, when something's written and it's the New York Times, you quote it all over the world, and it's true. Are you careful? You've got to be with anything you read. Anything. That's what you got to be careful of. Anyway, the four cities. And I guess before we take our break, let me just go over what she's doing here. Because I'm going to lose this if I don't. All right, I had my Mishkafayim with me, my glasses. I don't, oh, here they are. Okay, let me just go over this more with you right now. Okay, the bottom of page 122, 132, Tiveria, you have the Lamed with a Chirik under it, Mitzada. Mitzada is Masada, and Mitzada is a famous rock or hilltop that overlooks Israel. It's said to be on that particular Matzada mountaintop that the 930 or 940, something like that, Jews took their own lives rather than be taken by the Romans. And on Mount Masada, notice the English is Masada, the Hebrew is Mitzada.
Oh wow, I didn't know it ended like that.
Yeah.
I thought they killed them.
No. This was group suicide, the famous group suicide. The only paragraph we have that seems to authenticate it, even though it's not disagreed, is a paragraph in Josephus. And it's today Masada or Metzada, the very place where Israel's fighting elite, its special forces, are brought up to that mountaintop and take an oath of allegiance to the flag and state of Israel on Mount Masada. And to make it personal on the American side, President Trump, the first time he's elected president, I believe, requested to go to Mount Masada. I'm not sure if he was a candidate at that time or was president, and the Israeli government said no. And why did they say no, Yirmiyahu? They did not want Trump to be in all in danger. Nothing could be more spectacular than killing the American president who's moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem to be killed on Mount Masada.
I almost thought you were going to say because he was a Russia.
How's that?
I thought you said he's not allowed because he's a Russia.
No, it was a zero. Anyway, so you got that there. Now, notice she goes on before Shva. Statement number B on the bottom of page 132. If the first letter in the noun is a yud with a shva under it, then the yud is not pronounced. So look at the word Yerushalayim and Li Yerushalayim. All right, when she says it's not pronounced, that's her way of talking. My way of telling you what happens here is this. The word Yerushalayim has a shvana under it. She already mentions if a word begins with a shvana, the lamed will have a shva. She doesn't mention it this way. This is how you should know it. The lamed has a shvana. The words you're attaching it to has a shvana. Shva cluster, you break it with a chirik. And you make the point that this is now a shvana, and that chirik is now part of the closed syllable. If a word begins with laryngeal letters, and she doesn't mention that, it has one of the chatafim under it, then the lamed would take over the sound of the chataf, sabon, short kamatz, or pata. And then a yud, the way she writes it up, makes no sense to me. Yerushalayim. The lamed breaks it, has the point of the chirik, and then you drop the shva underneath the yud. So she mentions Li Yerushalayim and the city of Jericho, Yericho.
Is that in Israel?
1 second. Lamed is with a chirik, and you drop the shva underneath the yud. Li Yericho. The way she explains it, she doesn't go into detail. Or maybe she does it her own way, but the way she says it, if the first letter of the noun is yud, when it's shva, then the yud is not pronounced. In other words, it's a long chirik. That's what occurs. Li Yerushalayim. She won't say, you don't say Li Yerushalayim. Li Yerushalayim, Li Richo.
Which one's the long hearing? At the beginning or at the end?
What's that?
Li, the long hearing
It's a long chirik.
would be under the lamed?
That's right. The shva underneath the look at the word Jerusalem has a shana under it. You point the lamed with a chirik anyway, but you don't have the shva under the yud anymore. It drops out. So the final appearance is like a long chirik. I mentioned it in my own survey. Let's just finish this up. In the literary style, the consonants bed cafe change after the bed. All right, what she's trying to say in the literary style, you have the shana and these lamed. So a bigger careful letter beginning the word will drop to the kal. So by will be leviat. Kli, kli is a cup. A kli is a vessel. That's better. A vessel. Vikli.
Beta kappa or beta kappa?
No,
What would you call it? What would you call the three letters? It's called the beta kappa?
no, 1 second. The word kli, let's try to answer your question. Kli has nothing to do with the Bakal letters. The word kli is a vessel. Vessel. The Kiddush cup that you have on Friday night, you can see it as a vessel. Anything that's a vessel, anything that contains liquid inside, I guess is a vessel, or whatever. The word is kli. This is the word. I want to say of a vessel, or to a vessel, or for a vessel. I add my lamed with a shvana. I have a shva cluster. She's emphasizing is the first letter of the word is a bakal letter in the sense the bet, the kav, but not bakal, is a beka kefa letter. These 6 letters, the bet, the gimel, the dalet, the kav, the pei, and the tav. Let's just take this first word first. There's a shva cluster. You break it by point. Well, first of all, the shvana causes the dagesh kal in the kav to drop out because it's following the half vowel. You have a shva cluster, and you point to chirik instead of shvana and lamed. Luckily, she only 1 second. She mentions only 3 of the 6 letters. She mentions the bet letter, the pei letter, the kaf letter, the pei letter. And this is a problem now with Israeli Hebrew. There are 6 letters which are known as the Bega Kefal letters, which take a dagesh kal if they begin a word, which take a dagesh kal if they follow a consonant in the middle of a word. Same thing as saying following with shvanach. The bet letter, the gimel letter, the dalet, the kav, the pei, and the tav. She mentions here only the bet letter, the kav letter, the pei. She does not mention the gimel, the dalet, and the tav. Why so? Because Israelis do not make a distinction in sound between the gimel with a dot or without a dot, the dalet with a dot or without a dot, the tav with a dot or without a dot. So that's why she does not include those letters in her statement about the bet, the kav, and the pei. But you need to know that. And if you write with vowels, you definitely have to put those letters in with the dots if they're called for, or without the dots if they're not called for.
And that's just accentuate the sound, make it stronger?
It's the sound.
Or double it?
You know, well, the dot that doubles the dagesh mazak. She's referring to the letters in the beginning of the word, which means a dagesh kal.
Oh, okay.
So by it, live by it, kli, likli, or bikli, she has a bet here. And the pakid, live pakid. But if I had the word dan, look at the word dan. Dan is Dan, let's say. To Dan, I'll have the line with the shvana, and I have to drop my dagesh kal in the dalet. But an Israeli doesn't sound the sound of a dalet with a dot or without a dot to be any different. The tav with a dot or without a dot to be any different. And the gimel, the same situation. Whether you have a dot in that gimel or not, the gimel sounds the same way. The other three letters, we make a distinction. Okay, that's the way Coffin does it, that's the way Zeb does it, and that's it. Oh, wait a minute now, there's one more example. Now, statement number 3. When a definite article is added to a noun, the hey is stricken out and the vowel is retained with the limit. So if you have a hey beginning word, like in ha università, the bed comes along, strikes out the hey, it's about università. If you have the limit there, if you have, yeah, the limit with ha università, the limit strikes out the hey, it's la università.
What causes off the hay? Because of the,
Again, if the noun that you're adding your Bacao letter to, the bet, the Calvin Lamed,
oh,
she's just talking about the bet Lamed. Okay, so if the word to which you're adding your Bacao, I have to say the Bacao letter to, is a definite noun. You strike out that hey letter, which has a vowel under it, and that's what you do. You don't say le ha university, you say la università. Whatever the hey vowel is, it stays in place, and the hay is removed by the lamed. Strikes out the hay. Take a look at the 4 examples at the bottom of page 133. Università is a university. Ha università is the university. The hay is pointed with a kamas. The original letter cannot be doubled, so the hay's patak becomes a kamas. We know that. I want to say at the, in the university. The bet comes along, strikes out the hay that's there for the university, and that's how you say ben, and that's how you say in the university, ba university. If this is meant to be in a university, then it'll be bit university. Same thing about to the university. Ha università is the university. Lama comes along, strikes out the hay, la università. Somebody's naggingly trying to call me. All right, people, I think at this moment we should take a break,
this
definitely.
is beautiful. You've been, this is what you've been ingraining in us since the beginning, but now we see it in print.
Okay.
But I just want to make, I don't want to interrupt you. As far as Kabbalah studying, most of what's out there is just like hocus pocus. And in terms of Kabbalah, the Kabbalah teacher picks you, you don't pick him. Unless you want to go to the Kabbalah Center, join and pay the fee and get in like Madonna.
Okay. All right, people, come back in 20 minutes. We'll see you around 125. Okay.
Like